Hey everyone, welcome back. So, I'm really excited to have with me today Heather Sweeney, and we're having a conversation that I have never had on the podcast and that I have been wanting to for many, many years. We are diving into the world that a world that most civilians don't ever really see, the world of military marriage and divorce. It is a world of service and sacrifice, also of silence, especially for the spouses who hold everything together while their partners serve. So, my guest today, Heather Sweeney, she knows this world very intimately. She is a writer, a former military spouse, and the author of the upcoming memoir, Camouflage: How I Emerged from the Shadows of a Military Marriage. So, this conversation, by the way, is not just for military spouses. It is for anyone who has felt invisible in their own relationship or wondered if they might be if they stopped holding everything together. So, Heather, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Kate. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So, all right. I want to start sort of like at the beginning. I mean, I've read something that you wrote. You talked about how it, being married to someone in the military is kind of like going home with a newborn baby. Like you have no idea what you're getting yourself in for ultimately, right? Same thing with motherhood. You're like, you could read all the books, you can do all the work, you can all of the things, but at the end of the day, they send you home from the hospital, you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. So, and it's all a
Absolutely.
surprise, right? So, what was it like for you when you first got married and maybe you thought you knew what you were getting involved with, but
Oh boy, I had absolutely no idea. And
Mm.
the funny thing is that a lot of people say to military spouses, you knew what you were getting into. And when I first married my then husband, he wasn't in the military yet. And so it must have been, I don't know, a couple months before we got married. And he came home one day and he said, "Well, I want to join the military." And I said, okay. I don't know anything about that. He didn't seem to know a whole lot about it either. And in a way, I almost thought it was just kind of one of his, grand ideas. And we were young, we were 23 and trying to figure out what we wanted to do with our lives. And sure enough, he joined the military about a month after we got married. And I just thought to myself, I'm just going to go with the flow and I'll follow him wherever he wants to go. And I think for me, I was studying to be an elementary school teacher, and I always kind of thought, well, his dreams are bigger than mine, and he'll always make more money than me. And I just want to be a teacher. I just want a simple teaching life. And so I said, well, he's going to make the bigger paychecks. I'll just follow him. I'll support him, and we'll see where it takes us. And I just had no idea, what I was getting into at all.
and were you ever able to be a teacher?
I was, but
Good.
many,
Okay.
many, many years later. It took a long time. And part of it,
Yeah.
another thing I write about is the fact that for military spouses, it's so hard for us to hold down a career
Right.
because of the constant moves. And so I had gotten my master's degree at our first duty station in Florida and was all set to start looking for jobs. Well, we moved to Japan for 3 years
Right.
and not a lot of job opportunities there.
Right.
And and
Right.
and so then we moved to Virginia where I had to work all over again to get my teacher certification from Florida to Virginia. So that took a year just to get my certification. And then he only had 3-year orders. So it's like, okay, it took me a year to get certified in this state. And it took me another 6 months to find a job. Well, we're leaving in a year and a half. So
Right.
yes,
Right.
it's hard.
It really does not um it doesn't it's not fertile ground for you first of all to plant any roots, right?
Yeah.
And it really is. I mean, you said, I'll follow him anywhere. And that was really kind of what your life became. But it's not all it's cracked up to be
No,
ultimately,
no,
right?
it's not. And another saying is, bloom where you're planted or prosper where you're planted. And because I loved the duty stations that we went to, but there are some that are really kind of crummy, and a lot of military spouses are like, well, I don't want to live here for 3 years, but we have no choice. Um, but yeah, it's you just have to make do with where you're told to go.
Right.
Mhm.
That's the, or, and or, right? Just be completely separated for if, because if you don't get on board and go with him, um, if you had stayed in Florida, like what kind of a marriage is that?
No, it would have been terrible. There is something called geobatching, a geobachelor, and that's when the service member will go to a duty station, whether it's overseas or somewhere that's far away, because he or she doesn't want to uproot the kids out of school or things like that. But
Right.
it's really for short, short stints, um, and not really like a 3 year tour. If he had gone to Japan for 3 years, I mean, that's really unfeasible for a marriage.
Yeah,
But I love
absolutely.
Japan.
Yeah, okay, well, good. Well, there was that. Right,
Yes,
exactly. Right.
yes,
You do get to see the world, not necessarily on
absolutely.
your terms, but
Yes.
it is a bonus. And
Yeah,
then but then, you also talk about this thing that I think is really interesting, this idea of like reintegration, right? And that it's not just about we've been separated and now we're coming back together and we have to reintegrate. You're reintegrating after tours of duty. You had to reintegrate with your husband after he came back from Iraq. Like, this is not a normal reintegration. This is like someone is coming back completely changed.
absolutely. Yes, the first time he went to Iraq, he was gone for 6 months, and when he left, our son was 6 months old. And I was trying to get my master's degree at the time. So
Mm,
we said our goodbyes, and, I never knew where he was or what he was doing. And, I'm fearing for his safety.
right.
But yes, so while they're gone, you have to make your own routines. You have to move on with your life without them. So my son was young, and his mom's, we try to set routines and get used to just life on our own, because it's survival mode. You have to do your best to do what you can without your spouse.
Hmm.
And then on his end, he's not used to living with other people or moving around other people or having a baby in the picture. And he has
Right.
his own schedule. So then when he came back, um, it was just odd. It was just this weird, is something wrong with our marriage? I don't know how to talk to you anymore. You're interrupting my schedule. This is what I do at this time of day. And then there's the jet lag and all of these things that I'm looking for signs of PTSD and anything like that. And to make matters worse, 4 months after he got back from Iraq, we were on a plane to Japan. So we had to sell the house. We had to just make all of these arrangements, see family that we wanted to see before we left. And there's just a lot of moving parts. And nobody even told me at that time that there was something called reintegration. And so I thought
Mm,
something was wrong with us. And it wasn't until years later when he got deployed again that I realized, oh, wait a minute, there really is something that other
there's a
couples,
process.
yes, there's a process. This is normal, because I kept thinking something's wrong with us. We're not, this is not normal. We're
Mm.
supposed to be, this romantic notion of homecoming. I'm sure you've seen on TV and
All
in the
the
movies.
videos, right?
Yes. And
All the TikToks, all the,
yes.
right? Mm-hmm.
Yes, and sure, it's like that at the beginning. You jump into each other's arms and you hug and you kiss and you're so happy to see each other. And um, but then real life happens again, and you still have to pay the bills and you still have to go to work. And he went right back to work a couple weeks after he got home after the jet lag, and then he got sick, and then his parents came because they hadn't seen him for half a year either. And it was just a lot. And it was a lot to get used to and a lot to learn. And I just felt like the military didn't prepare the spouses at all. I don't know how much they prepare the service members, but there was no, there's no class that I took to teach me
Right,
these things.
right,
It
right.
was
Which would
all on the
be,
job training.
yeah, would be kind of
Mhm.
a, I think a good, probably a good side gig for somebody, right? Like, I
Yeah,
mean, teaching these things because also, stability at home creates stability in the armed forces, I would assume, right? And
Yes.
so like maybe this is something they should actually think about, right?
Well, and there are resources out there for sure. And I'm sure that there
Mm-hmm.
are more now than there were back then. This was back
Right.
in,
Right.
2004-ish.
Right.
And there were resources I didn't know about them at all. And maybe that's on me. Maybe I was waiting for someone, but yeah, it was a tough time.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And so I I assume like these are the things that start chipping away at a
Absolutely.
marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what are some of the, so, besides, I mean, are there other things besides the separation, the reintegration? Like, I don't know who you are anymore, you're different, like all of those things, like our home life is different, you're different. Are there other invisible pressures of military marriage that civilians might not see or understand or,
Yeah, I think there's also this level of, part of what I write about too is I just completely lost my own identity in his career. And so even
sure.
though I was pursuing my own career, I think there's this unwritten rule that military spouses are there primarily to hold down the home front while their service member is doing their job and serving their country. And I guess nobody warned me about that either, that my full-time job was supposed to be military spouse. And even things like going to marriage counseling. And again, it's not as bad these days anymore. But when I realized that we really needed marriage counseling, we were in Japan and it was an extremely small military base. And the only people that we could really use as a resource for counseling were people that we socialized with, that we went out to karaoke bars with, and we hung out with. And it's very hard to confide in people that my husband was working with on a daily basis. And he
Well,
didn't want everybody knowing our business. And, I needed someone who was going to be objective, and we just didn't have that at all.
Well, and from a therapy perspective, that's completely unethical anyway,
Right,
right?
right,
So
right.
like
But,
that,
you know,
yeah,
even when we came back to the States and we were continuing to have problems in the marriage, and I kept saying, we have got to go to counseling. And it wasn't until I was one foot out the door, half a bag packed, that he said, okay, let's do it. So
yeah.
he found a counselor and we met up at a library outside on a picnic table. And I said, well, why are we not meeting in her office? And he said, "Oh, she's an off the books kind of therapist." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" It was somebody hired by the military. Her job was to serve the military, and I quickly realized that, like most things with having to do with the spouses or the families, the priority is a service member, not the spouse, not even the marriage. And so she didn't care at all about me or my needs. She told me constantly that I was angry. We had a counseling session at Panera in the
No,
middle of the day.
no.
Yes. It was brutal. I was crying. I had tissues while people were eating their soups and sandwiches. And I truly believe that she wanted me to be uncomfortable. And when she was also meeting with us individually, and I would have this list of things that I wanted to talk about, things that were just constantly on my list of, we need to fix this, which weren't the same as my husband's, to be honest. And
Of course they
um
weren't.
right.
Right.
And she refused to talk about any of the things I wanted to talk about. And then when he had a session with her, he came back and he said, "You know what? She said that our marriage cannot be fixed because you are not receptive to counseling." And I was like, I've been begging you to go to counseling for years. I think I am. I'm going to Panera. I'm going to the library. And yeah, it was tough.
Wow.
We ended up I said I can't see her anymore. And well, it ended up we saw her for about a month, and then my husband had to go away for like 6 weeks, I think. And that was another thing too with counseling. It's really hard to be consistent
Right,
in
right, right.
counseling and stick to a plan when one of the people in the partnership is just constantly gone. And so by the time he got back, we were back at square one. Everything, all the progress, because we actually did make some progress. He was really responding to her, which is the only reason I kept going,
Hmm.
because I'm like, okay, things are working a little bit. But then he got back and we were square one. And I said, well, now I'm going to find a counselor. So,
Right, right. And it is,
yeah.
you do write about that too, about the fact that for a lot of military spouses or military marriages, you end up in in couples counseling by yourself a
Yeah.
lot of the time.
Oh, I went a lot by myself,
Not to
which
her,
is
I hope.
nice. No, 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 no. We ended up I found somebody else. We actually went to three different marriage counselors. The third one didn't last very long. We were done by the time we got to her.
I'm
But
sure, I'm sure.
yes, yes. But
So So you end up really like, as you've said, as a support system. Like you are in a supportive role. That's it.
yes,
Like that is your life.
yes.
Is there any way for that not to be the case in a military marriage? Like
Oh boy.
I,
Um,
this, it feels like the system is set up so that like that's it. That's all you get, right?
From my experience and from the friendships I made in my military spouse life, yeah, that's pretty much the case across the board. And but I truly believe there are people, I have friends who make it, they do have struggles in their marriage,
Yeah.
but I do believe that if you're with the right person, you can overcome certain things. And I just wasn't with the right person, and we weren't meant
There's
to, we
that.
just couldn't overcome these things because we had more going on than the military. And I do
Sure.
believe that the military might have kept us together longer than we would have without the military, because we just kept sweeping things under the rug. Oh, well, he needs to leave for 2 months. Well, let's not get in a fight before he leaves, because that would stink. And I don't want to, ship him off when we're
Yeah.
angry at each other. And then you
Yeah.
can't get in a fight or talk things out when he's gone, because sometimes it's a 3-minute conversation. Oh, I can only call real quick, and oh, I don't have internet access. So you don't want to fight when he's gone. Then you don't want to fight or hash things out when he comes back, because you're supposed to be happy to see each other. Because, oh, I haven't seen you in 3 months. And
Right.
sure, I'm happy to see you. And then the
You don't want
next
to be
thing,
sitting there with a list where you're like, oh, well, you're
exactly.
back. That's great now.
Exactly. And then there were times in the marriage that he hadn't even unpacked his bags from the last trip when he was starting to get ready for the next one. And for deployments, you have to worry about updating his will and me getting a power of attorney and making sure my military ID isn't expired. I had a military ID confiscated one time at the clinic because it was
It was
expired and
expired.
he was gone and my power of attorney was expired. And so I'm like, well, I can't shop at the commissary. I can't go to the doctor. I can't bring the kids to the doctor. So, yeah, you literally get a card and you are called a dependent, which I really don't know any military spouse who likes that title, but we are called military dependents.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. You really are
Yes.
not your own person
No,
in the eyes of
no.
the military.
No, even
Wow.
calling to make a
Fascinating.
doctor's appointment, when you call or say, what is your sponsor's social? Like everything you do as a spouse, you need your spouse's social security number to access anything.
Wow.
Yeah. So I memorized his social security number before mine. Yeah.
It feels so antiquated and so offensive. And so like, so deeply patriarchal. And
Oh,
so,
yes. Oh,
I mean, and of course
absolutely.
we know that. Of course we know that about the military, but
Mhm.
like, really? No, really.
It really is. It really
Wow.
is.
Wow.
Yes.
So,
And there are
okay.
some male spouses, but the majority are female.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, I just total sidebar. Do you think that their experiences as military spouses is different?
For
A
the
male
males,
spouse? Mm-hmm.
um, that's a very good question. I'm not quite sure. I don't know a lot of male spouses. Um, I'm not really sure about
Yeah,
that.
that's just total
Yeah.
curiosity.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's a very good question.
so okay, so then at a certain point you realize this is unsustainable. We can't do this anymore,
Mhm.
military or not. But
Mhm.
because you're a military spouse, divorce is not the same
It's tricky.
as it is for the rest of us. So,
It is.
can you talk a little bit about that and how it
Sure.
differs? Yeah.
Sure. Well, first of all, spouses are entitled to see military lawyers that are called JAGs, but JAGs don't practice state law, and divorce goes by state law, so they can't represent you. So I did go try to see a JAG just to see what my benefits were, and I wasn't. There's certain rules about how long you have to be married, how long he has to be in the military, and how long that overlaps in order for me to maintain some of those benefits. And we were not married long enough, so I lost all of my benefits, all of my health care. I was allowed to shop at the commissary. Um, if I was shopping for the kids, which is kind of a gray area, we have two kids.
You
Um,
can't eat that dino nugget in the
really,
military.
really, it has to be for them.
Has to be for the children.
Um, but I think that the biggest challenge for me after the divorce was the custody schedules.
Right.
Yes, it's
Right.
very tricky because, and at first it was like, okay, we have legal 50-50 custody, but they're going to live most of the time with me because he's gone so much. So I'm getting
Oh,
child support
I,
based on 50-50 custody.
just
I-
this. I mean, right?
Mm-mm.
You're so you.
Mhm.
Mm.
Oh, it gets worse. It
Oh,
gets worse.
good. Oh, good.
So
Do go
when we
on.
right, so when we first got divorced, he was still here. And then a little bit after that, so I live in Virginia. He got stationed for a year in Washington, D.C. So I'm like,
Okay.
okay, so he was commuting back because, to his credit, he was one of those fathers who did want to spend time with his kids. He was, not
Yeah.
someone who disappeared.
Uh-huh.
And so he was commuting back on the weekends, but he said, well, can we change it? The kids used to be with him from Friday night to Sunday night. And then we switched it from Saturday morning to Monday morning, where he had to take the kids to school on Monday
Hmm.
morning. And they were in
Hmm.
elementary school and he lived 20 minutes away from us. So late to school, shoes are forgotten, schoolwork isn't done, things like that, because he's not used to our schedule, and because
Parenting.
right.
Yeah. Right.
But then it gets worse from there. So we did that for a year. And by the time everybody got used to their schedules again, he called me up one day and said, I got military orders. And I said, okay, I knew they were coming. And I said, where are you going? And he said, Hawaii. I said, okay, well, I'm not going to Hawaii. So what are we going to do about the children? So he suggested I would like for the kids to stay with you during the school year and then spend 10 weeks every summer with me in Hawaii. And I said, hmm. Went back, consulted an attorney because I said, there's no way in hell I want to ship off my kids for 10 weeks. I've never been apart from them for that long. And again, we have 50-50 custody. And I went to see an attorney, and she said, save your money. And the judge is going to side with him because he wants to spend time with his children. And I live in a very, very highly populated military area.
Right.
And she said that, and I've heard this from other women as well, that as long as they want to spend time with the kids, the judges are going to do whatever in their
Whatever it
power.
takes. Hmm.
Right, because
Hmm.
they're on military orders, that we want to
Right.
make sure that, they can see the kids when they want to. So sure enough, the kids were with me. I was a full-time single mom. I worked. Luckily, I worked from home. And so if there was an emergency, the kids are sick at school, I could pick them up. But I don't have any family nearby. My parents and my in-laws they're both in Florida, and I didn't grow up in Virginia, and so it was me. And then they went on an airplane and I didn't see them for 10 weeks.
And how old were
Mhm.
they at this point?
Oh goodness, they were both in elementary school. So
Oh my God.
they had just finished up second and fifth grade.
Mm-mm.
Hmm.
No.
Yes. So
Oh
it was
boy.
heartbreaking. But you know what? I stayed in therapy
Hmm.
because it was very important for me to work on myself. and figure out everything that had gone wrong before I started really dating and trying to look for another relationship. And one of the things my therapist said is like, let's flip the script. Okay, you don't have any choice. Your kids are going to Hawaii. Yay, they're going to have
Mhm.
great fun. They went to
Right.
this awesome summer camp, did some cool things.
Totally.
Yes. And so I'm like, you know what? I have no choice. So I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to focus on self-care. And so I ended up going to Turks and Caicos for a week by myself.
I love that. I
Yes.
love that. I love that you did that.
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
good. But I want to go back to this 50. So, okay, couple of things, right?
Mhm.
Oh, so you have, oh,
Right?
pull it together, Kate.
Yes.
The feminist rage.
Uh-huh. I get it.
So, okay, so, you have access to these military attorneys,
Mhm.
but they actually can't advise you on your divorce because they're not, because they're military attorneys, they're not state law, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
so then you have to pay for an outside counsel. Does
Yes.
he also have to pay for outside counsel
Yes.
or
Yes.
okay.
Yes. But
So,
I will also say that I couldn't get a lot of information out of the JAG anyway because my ex-husband called them and said, my ex-wife is probably going to be coming in and or soon to be ex-wife. And once he spoke to them, I think he called like there are multiple military bases here, and I'm pretty sure he called all of the bases
to
and
conflict
just
you out.
yes. So I couldn't talk to them anyway. They wouldn't have helped me anyway. And I knew that going into it. I think more, it was just more of a curiosity thing for me. Just, well, I wonder what they're going to say to me. And it was, they started out by saying, ma'am, we can't really talk to you. Our best advice is to hire a civilian attorney. So,
Awesome. So
yes.
so then so then in this negotiation, is there a world in which like you get in front of a judge who actually looks at this schedule and says, this doesn't seem fair that you're going to get 50-50 on paper. All of the financials are going to be based on 50-50. Your child support, everything is going to be based on 50-50,
Mhm.
but you are basically going to be doing almost 100%, maybe
Right.
70-30, probably more like 80-20.
Right.
Um, and then 100%, knowing that he's going to be deployed.
Right.
How does a judge look at that and say, yeah, no, 50-50 on paper is totally fair?
I don't know. I think, um, I could, so according to the attorney I saw, and the attorney I saw was wonderful. They represent only women and they represent military spouses or military service members who are women. So they know
Wow.
military, what's going on with the military. They know how
Wow.
people, the judges in the courts are
Yeah.
going to react to military families. And
Okay.
she told me, she said, look, if you have your children for a certain percentage of the time, I can't remember what that percentage was, you can file for full
You can go
custody.
back. Right.
Yes, you can go back, you can fight
Yeah.
this, you can
Okay.
petition for full custody. She said, but it's going to involve a lot. It's going to involve a lot of money for both of you in and out of court, hiring attorneys. And the biggest thing that is the probably the reason I didn't pursue it is because she said that there would be a juvenile I don't know, mediation or a juvenile someone who is going to come and talk to the teachers, the kids' teachers, and do home visits. And, the kids had had enough in
Yeah.
their lives with the
Yeah.
divorce because I ended up moving out of the marital home and into an apartment, and they changed schools because he would not move out of the house. So I moved and took the kids with me, moved into an apartment half the size. And then, so the kids had already changed schools, already made new friends, were already dealing with their parents being divorced. And I said, you know what, I just can't put them through
Yeah.
anymore.
No.
And the time it would have taken, these things just get held up in the court
Oh,
system.
100%. 100%.
Yes.
And
And
it's
at
not
that point, yeah.
not
At that
favorable to
point, he
women
probably would have been
anyway.
back, right? I mean, he was in Hawaii for
Right.
3 years. I'm like, well, by the time this finishes, you might even be back. So,
Yeah. I just
mhm.
it's just so upsetting to me that I mean, you could go back and petition not just for full custody, but for at least amended support. Like, oh, you're going to be gone for this amount of time and I'm going to have the kids all the time. It costs a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that there would be, you would think that in a military divorce, there would at least be some consideration for the fact that um, one spouse is going to be absent a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so even a like a time audit kind of situation where you would really where the support might shift
Yeah.
based on, but I guess we'd have to redo the entire system. But
Yeah. And even, and so we dealt with that, and the kids ended up just going to Hawaii for the 2 summers because the
Mhm.
first summer he didn't have a house. And so I'm like, well, I'm not sending the kids to stay in a hotel with you. And then he ended up getting stationed back in this area for 3 years. But then during that time, he got deployed for a year. So he was here with his new partner, and I was here with my new partner. But he wasn't really here because then he was gone for a year.
And so he never looked at this and said, he was not the kind of guy who was going to look at this and be like, this isn't really fair. Let me support my children. Because this is, they think it's about you, right?
Right. Right.
Right.
And I never threatened to take him to court. For me, it wasn't
No.
worth a court battle. I didn't want to pay for the attorneys, and the kids have a wonderful stepfather, and this was their home, and we just made it work. And quite frankly, and I say this about our marriage, my life was easier when he was gone. And towards when I realized that things were really bad in the marriage, it's because I realized that I looked forward to him leaving on his trips. And my life, there's one instance I'll never forget. We were in Japan. He left for, I can't even remember how long. I had a stomach bug. Our daughter was 8 months old. She was born in Japan. She was like 7 or 8 months old. I had a stomach bug. And I literally was saying to my friend, life is just easier. I'd rather have a stomach bug with a newborn and a toddler, and he's gone, and life is easier. Um, but even like during a
Whew.
deployment after we were divorced, it was just easier when he was gone. The kids didn't have to pack up. They couldn't stand packing their suitcases, every weekend and going to his house and disrupting things. And then they're older now. My kids are 18 and 21 now. And so obviously the custody isn't an issue anymore. But they got to an age where they wanted to spend the weekends hanging out with their friends and
Yeah.
not going to their
Not,
dad's house when they're like, oh, well, you don't really know me and I don't really know you because when he was deployed, they didn't see him for almost a year.
and then they have to be pulled out, especially if you're not living in the same community. They have to be
Right.
pulled out of their community. They don't have as much access to their friends, right? It's
Right.
just, yeah, it's so
Right.
disruptive for them.
Yeah, very disruptive.
So,
Yeah.
and, I just feel so there's such seeming, and I'm not saying this about your ex in particular because I don't know the man, but seeming lack of empathy or consideration for how all of this impacts you or the children. It's just, well, this is what I get and this is who I am, and like the fact that like your whole life is disrupted and that you do nothing but support it, but then it becomes this entitlement, right? It sets that in place. The system sets that entitlement in place from the beginning.
Yes. Yes. It's very much and I don't know if it's something that would have come out in his personality anyway,
Yeah.
regardless of what his job was, but I definitely do feel like um military spouses are put in place to make sure that the service member doesn't have to worry about
Hmm.
little things like the grocery shopping or taking the kids to the
Sure.
doctor or
Yeah.
things like that. It's very much okay. The service member has a mission to do. We need here, him to do this, and the spouse is going to be at home making sure that they have something good to eat. And maybe other military spouses didn't have the same experience. Again, everybody's got a different marriage, and I do know a lot of military couples who made it and figured out a way, because communication is so hard when you spend
Well,
a very large portion of your marriage apart. um you have to find a way to communicate. And
Yeah.
in my marriage, communication was just, it was never good. It was
It
awful.
wasn't your forte to begin with. Yeah. I mean,
No,
I
it
get
was
that.
not.
But I think, and I do think that there's a way in which the system is so stacked against the spouse. Um, and it would take someone pretty extraordinary to see that and work to counterbalance it a bit, or to balance it out. And it sounds like you did not have that spouse.
No, no, I did not.
Sorry.
And really, we would have gotten divorced
Totally.
regardless.
Yeah, totally.
But military life puts a lot of extra stress on couples that wouldn't otherwise have to deal with certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But you also married to a guy who just changed the script like in the 11th hour, decided to join the military without
Yeah,
it being like a, hey, this is a massive lifestyle change for both of us, right?
absolutely,
So, yeah.
absolutely. And maybe if I'd done more research, I just kind of was following his lead, and
Mhm. And you were
again, we
young. You were
we were very
23.
young. Yes, we were
Yeah.
23 when
Yeah.
we
Oh
met.
God.
I think we were 22 when we met, and it was very a whirlwind romance. I was getting out of a long-term relationship, and we moved in together after like 3 months, and after 9 months we were engaged, and it was very, very quick and romantic, and yeah, it was, I just, and I think because I never considered myself a hugely ambitious person. Like I said, I
Mm,
just wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to, have a nice home and live near family and have a
yeah.
couple kids and a dog maybe. And, um, I just didn't think that, the whole military thing would come to mean as much as it did and affect us as much as it did.
Right, right. And you weren't raised in the military. You don't know what you
No,
don't know, right?
no, right.
100%.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about like afterwards. After the divorce, you're while you're in this marriage, you're trying to reclaim and trying to maintain some sense of self because you have to for that consistency, but then also it's constantly being disrupted. So you write about how, like, actually that really kind of prepared you pretty well for life as a single mom on the other side of divorce, as hard as it was in the marriage. Uh,
Absolutely. There's
yeah.
so many things about being a military spouse that later on I learned, okay, I'm really good at moving, at packing things up and moving. I
Mhm.
mean, even in Japan, we were there for 3 years. We lived in three different houses. I can pack a moving box like no one's business.
Yes.
But even just, being alone, spending time alone and solo parenting. And I often say too that I used to call myself a sometimes single mom, but I did learn there's a very big difference between single parenting when your husband is gone on a deployment and then single parenting after divorce,
Yeah.
mostly for the financial reasons, when you're
100%.
right. But just the resiliency and
Mhm.
just learning the loneliness and being adaptable. I took all of those skills from my military spouse life and used them after the divorce.
Yeah.
So thanks, military. You taught me something.
You taught me how to be lonely. Thank you.
Yes. Mhm.
Oh dear. So, yeah, and it's sort of yeah, there's something about I almost feel like it's a little like a Shawshank situation, right? Where it's like you were living under sort of this military structure that was very structured and regimented, and really you didn't have a whole lot of freedom and say in a lot of the ways that your life was set up. And then you get out into the world and it's not there anymore. And I can imagine there's a little destabilizing, despite the fact that you were trained to be kind of okay with change and loneliness and all of those things.
Yeah.
Also, you take away the support structures and you're kind of a fish out of water.
Yeah, I did. And I did, a large part was also that I had a hard time finding my community. The military spouse community is very tight
Yeah,
knit.
I bet.
And especially when we were overseas, and there were some amazing military spouses over there, and we were each other's village. We helped raise each other's kids, and we played bunco together, and we went shopping together, and all of that stuff. And I am still friends with a lot of military spouses, and they were all still friends with me when I got divorced, but everything was kind of different that they didn't understand. They were just like, oh, my husband's gone, but he got this special pay. When they go overseas, they get a special extra pay, like just hazardous duty pay and things like that. I'm like, oh, but his paychecks are bigger. And I'm just like, oh, well, I'm alone now, but my paychecks are, I'm living paycheck to paycheck here because I'm not, reaping the benefits of that. And, my friends were starting to leave too. So I was used
Right.
to moving every 3 years, but my friends were also moving every couple of years. And so I had a lot of friends here. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all moving. They're all leaving. And I did a large part of my identity was wrapped up in that. And I'm like, well, I don't even want to be involved in the military, and why I can't relate to them and they can't really relate to me. And so I'm like, well, now I want to
Mm.
find a divorced community. And so I started hanging out with some women, but they didn't have any kids. And so they didn't have the single mom aspect. And
Yeah, not
so
not the same. I mean,
not the same.
often not the same. Hmm.
Yes. And I did consider, it's funny, after I lived in Virginia for a few years, I did get an itch to move. I'm like, wait a minute, isn't it time to move?
Yeah, I
But
bet.
I'm
I
still here.
bet.
I've been here a long time. This is actually the longest I've ever lived in one place. I've been here since 2008. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
good
it
for
was
you.
nice. I was able to, then the kids' home base is with me. So when they come home from college, this is home for them. And
Hmm.
um yeah, it's been quite an adventure
Yeah,
in
and
the
so in the
military and
mean,
then out.
yeah, and at some point you started writing, and you've written quite prolifically for the New York Times and other outlets and your Substack. Like you've got quite a body of work, and some of it was pre-divorce. You've written about like I am not going to be one of those divorce statistics, and then
Yeah,
cut to okay. But you've written about the difficulty of being a military spouse and getting divorced in the military. And so how did did writing sort of help buoy you through some of these times?
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I actually announced my divorce in the New York Times. I had worked with an editor on two other pieces. It was for a vertical called the At War blog.
Right.
And I had written a piece about not being a statistic of military divorce and about going to marriage counseling and how at the time it was working.
Uh-huh.
And I messaged this editor and I said, well, despite my last essay about marriage counseling, I am getting divorced. My ex asked me not to write about it for a year. In the state of Virginia, if you have children, you have to be legally separated for an
Right.
entire year before you can get divorced.
Right.
And so my ex said, just, could you not write about this for a year? And at first I was like, no, you can't tell me what to do anymore. But I'm really glad that that happened because
Yeah.
I journaled like crazy. And when I went back and looked through those journals as I was writing my memoir, I realized how angry and bitter and raw
Yeah.
everything was. I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't publish any of this because it's not good. And I wouldn't want my kids to see that either. It was a lot of just anger that, no longer mattered once I kind of time, healed the wounds. But yeah, so we got divorced. I'm walking out of the courtroom. I'm walking to my car. I emailed the editor and I said it's a done deal. And an hour later, my New York Times piece went up, and the first sentence was, "Today I got divorced."
Yep.
And I think another thing for me too, as far as like finding the identity, my ex was adamant that I write under my maiden name. So when my writing career started with a blog, and for years, it was called Riding the Roller Coaster, and my entire identity, my name was Roller Coaster, which seems ridiculous to me now, but he would not let me write under my name, like not even my maiden name. And
Uh-huh.
then, right. So then I got this opportunity with the New York Times, and they said, you cannot write under a pen name for the New York Times. So I went back to my then husband and said, I'm not giving up this opportunity. It's the New York freaking Times.
Right.
And he said, well, I don't want you to write under your married name. And so we kind of worked out, okay, well, I'll write under my maiden name, but I won't make a connection to my blog persona. So I'm writing these essays for the New York Times, and I couldn't share them anywhere. Couldn't share them on my blog, couldn't share them on my social media because my ex didn't want me to. But
I
then when we got
mean,
divorced,
uh-huh, uh-huh. I
uh-huh,
was like, I mean, you could have, but
right.
right.
And
Oh dear.
so, but it ended up working out well for me because also walking out of that courtroom, I reverted back to my maiden name. And so Heather Sweeney is my maiden name, but it's also the only name I've ever written under. And so
Right. It's
I
pretty
have,
great.
right, I have no bylines under my married name. So it
Yeah.
ended up, working out well for me anyway.
Hmm.
But yeah, for a while I couldn't, so I would have social media accounts under Roller Coaster, and he didn't even want me putting pictures of myself. So I didn't even have like a profile picture. I had just some graphics. Yes.
Oh dear. Yes. All right. Yeah, there's
Yep.
my feminist rage is going at it again.
I know,
Uh,
right?
all right. So, Heather, for someone maybe currently in a military marriage and struggling, what would you want them to know?
Oh, I would want them to know that if they are in a solid marriage and a solid relationship, that there are ways to handle this kind of lifestyle. And there
Mm-hmm.
are resources out there too. And I just
Mm-hmm.
didn't know about a lot of them. You can call the Military One Source. That is a great resource for military families. They do all sorts of things. They do tax preparation, and that's how I found my second marriage counselor. Is you can call them up and say, I live in such and such a city. I need to find a marriage counselor. We got 12 free sessions. I'm not quite sure they're still, I think they are still doing that. But at the time, I got 12 free sessions, and it was not somebody who worked for the military. It was a civilian
Oh,
counselor.
good.
They just are a resource to help you find that. Um, you can go to other spouses at your service members command. You can go on base to learn what kind of resources they have as far as counseling or just making friends or meetups. And I would say my biggest advice is to get involved, because when we were in Japan, I got involved in everything. I thought,
Mm.
well, I can't work. There are no jobs. I mean, there was a Department of Defense school there, but the waiting list just to be a substitute teacher was 2 years long.
Oh my God.
Um, so there are resources everywhere on base. We went on trips with Morale, Welfare, and Recreation (MWR). You could do all sorts of. They'll take you to parks. We got on a bus and went to a Japanese baseball game.
Mm.
um, just getting involved. And I think the hardest thing is finding the resources.
Mm-hmm.
But with, everything online these days, you can just Google the base that your service member
Right.
is stationed at
Right.
and figure out all the resources there and say, hey, I need counseling. How can you help me? I need
Mm-hmm.
help with my taxes and my husband is gone. Who can help me with this? I'd say just get involved, find your people, and don't do it alone, because you're already alone. Your spouse is gone a lot.
Yeah.
So just find your community. It's out there. There are military spouses out there. And I think I've first found my community in Japan. It was just, again, amazing people. And then when we came to Virginia and we were at a much larger base, a much larger community, I kind of let that fall off. And I do take that on myself, because there are multiple ways I could have gotten involved and I didn't. But
Mm.
then when I started blogging, I found my people, and
Yeah.
it really broadened my horizons, because my ex-husband was Navy, and I learned a lot about other branches of the military. And I was an officer's wife, and I wasn't supposed to socialize with enlisted families. That's a whole other story.
Oh my
Um,
God.
so I learned a lot about enlisted families. There's a lot of you're not supposed to fraternize with anyone who could be under your husband's chain of
Yeah,
command.
right, right, right.
Yes.
Wow, they really make it hard for you. I mean, they really
Yes,
do. Like
they do.
they stack so much against you, and it seems
Yes,
pretty counterintuitive given what they need of the the military service member, right? I
absolutely.
mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so for people who are currently navigating divorce in the military, um, what advice do you have for them?
Get a good attorney. I mean, I saw someone, I don't know how prevalent this is in other communities, but like I said, my attorney that I sought out, um, they know military, all about what you're due as far as retirement and
Ah,
benefits.
mm-hmm.
And that's another tricky thing too when you get divorced, because military retirement it's a big deal, for service
It's
members. They
pretty
make it
great.
20 years, they retire, and it's a great retirement.
Yep, sure is.
And if you are married a certain period of time, you still have access to TRICARE, which is the health care, and all of the things on base. And I mean, I was married for 13 years, and that was not long
Hmm.
enough.
I know that's
And
oof.
I had to find my own health insurance, and I was booted out of that system very quickly. And, I was rationing my thyroid medication because I didn't have health insurance and couldn't afford it. I was living paycheck to paycheck. And ultimately, and I did have a job at the time, and I ended up, getting a promotion where I did get my benefits. But a lot of military spouses who divorce aren't that lucky.
Right.
I've heard stories of spouses just getting handed papers where their husbands are like, yeah, I don't want to be married anymore. And the spouse is blindsided and like, I don't even know what to do.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of like you're exiled, right? You're banished
Yes. Yes.
from this entire system
Yeah.
that you have dedicated your life to.
Hmm.
And now it's like you're persona non grata and that's it. You're out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Hmm.
will say also that I did make a very conscious decision too at some point, that when I did start dating again, I did not want to get into another military relationship. And I did write about that once. And oh boy, did I get slammed in the comments. That,
Oh,
oh,
yeah. And
yes.
you know what? You wrote about it quite in a measured tone because I read it.
Yeah.
You did not write about it from a I'll never do this again. You
Mm,
wrote about it from a I I now understand it
right.
and I choose, it's not something I would choose again. When I got
Yeah.
into it to the beginning, I didn't know anything about it, and now I know I wouldn't choose it again. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, you did not actually say anything negative
And
at
yeah,
all.
and I think a large part of it too for me is going back to the kids. And, you want to do what's right for the
Right.
children. And I just couldn't imagine getting involved with another service member where we're moving every 3 years, but my kid's father is
But
also
they're
moving every 3 years and getting
oh my God.
deployed. And I
Yeah,
just didn't want them to have two father figures who were gone all the time. And
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're
Yeah.
right. I did, as we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, that when people, it always used to just annoy me when people say, "Well, you knew what you're getting into." But if got in a relationship with another service member, yeah, I absolutely know what I'm getting into, and I don't want to do it.
Right.
So,
And that's your choice. As a
yes,
civilian,
yeah,
you actually get to choose this time.
absolutely,
Oh
absolutely,
my gosh.
yes.
Heather, thank you so much for this. This has been a really enlightening conversation, and I really hope that women who are involved in this or about to navigate the system um, can really understand where they're at. So tell me well, first of all, what is life like for you now on the other side
Uh,
of this?
On the other side, I always say that the first year after divorce is the hardest.
Oh, yes.
I worked a lot on myself, and I
Hmm.
did start dating. I did find someone on the apps.
Woo!
My boyfriend and I, we've been together, oh boy, over 10 years.
Wow. Good
and
for you.
he's a wonderful stepfather to the kids. And yes, we consider ourselves a Match.com success story.
Excellent.
And I'm still in Virginia. We're still here, and the
Hmm.
kids are off to college and don't have to worry about custody anymore.
Hmm.
But yeah, things
Great.
are good.
Excellent. So,
Yes.
where can listeners find your work and pre-order Camouflage, which is coming out this month?
Yes, it's October 28th. Very exciting. It's happening very quickly all of a sudden.
Hmm.
You could pre-order Camouflage pretty much wherever books are sold right now. The audiobook is also for pre-sale, and I recorded it myself, narrated it myself,
Good.
which is fun. My
Hmm.
website is heatherlsweeney.com, and I'm on pretty much every social media platform, which is a lot these days. But I think I'm mostly on Instagram. I'm at Writer Sweeney, and I'm on Substack, and yeah, you can just Google me. I'm pretty much everywhere these days.
And everything will be in the show notes. So,
Thank you so much.
yes, I'm so happy. Thank you so much. So, you guys, Heather's book, Camouflage, How I Emerged from the Shadows of a Military Marriage, is coming out soon. So, definitely support that. Everything will be linked in the show notes. And as always, if anything in this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And your story, your healing, and your freedom, they all matter. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for having me.